Welcome back to Local 4 Live, everybody. 9:13 here on Monday morning. It is a decades-old mystery that now may never be solved. A plane disappears over Lake Michigan with dozens of people on board. Northwest Orient Flight 2501 left New York's LaGuardia Airport in June 1950, with stops scheduled in Minneapolis and Washington. It encountered bad weather, then stopped responding to radio requests. 58 people were killed. Body parts and debris began washing ashore at South Haven South Beach. You're looking live there right now, but the wreckage never found. So for the past 20 years, longer than that actually, the Michigan Shipwreck Research Association has been searching, but this year they have called off the search. Joining us now is Valerie Van Heest, the executive director of the association. She actually wrote a book about this tragedy. Valerie, thank you for joining us. I'll just ask the question right out of the gate. Why have we called off the search?
Well, it was a tough decision to make. 75 years ago this week, the accident happened. The Navy and the Coast Guard only spent a week on site looking, and back then they deemed it impossible to find. We thought with new technology, 55 years later, we began that search. We've put 20 years into it, and we're deciding that it's impossible to find. We made a lion's effort compared to the government 75 years ago.
Can you explain to us what the water there is like? It must be just devastatingly difficult to find anything when you're that deep and it's that dark.
Well, we normally search for shipwrecks. Our organization is a maritime organization. We use side scan sonar. The ships we look for are 150 to 250 feet long. This airliner was only 90 feet long, and we know from the debris discovered on the water and on the beaches that it broke up into thousands of pieces. So we're looking for a small debris field, not a big airplane sitting on the bottom. And we believe that after 75 years, those remains have settled into the muck on the lake bottom, no longer findable. We use a device called side scan sonar, which sends out acoustical impulses, and they look for anything sitting on the bottom, and they return an image. And we've seen nothing but flat sand bottom in the very high priority area that we've been searching.
Well, you had mentioned it was a difficult decision. I can't imagine just how difficult, because not only are you dealing with this mystery, but you're dealing with, I'm assuming, families who are looking or praying or hoping for some answers.
Yeah. Well, and for me, about 18 years ago, I was contacted by one family member, the son of a victim. His name was William Kaufman. His mother, Jean, died. And in getting to know Bill, he encouraged me to find other victims' families so they could compare notes. And in the space of about 5 years, I found 52 of the 58 families. And that's largely the reason that I wrote my book, Fatal Crossing, is to share what we were learning with the family members. I've kept up with them every year for the length of our search, reporting our search effort. And this year we had to report that after 20 years, we just can't keep this up anymore. We think we've covered the whole area.
Do you think, though, that even though you didn't find wreckage, maybe what you did find and the fact that it probably scattered in so many pieces and is just littered down there at the bottom of the lake now, maybe that was some closure for families?
We did. The research that I put together really solved the mystery of this crash. We know what the storm was doing. We know the information that Northwest operators gave the pilot. We know that wasn't good information. The pilot made his own decisions. They happened to be the wrong decisions. Certainly a storm brought this plane down. We just don't know precisely where. But it's through the book, it's through a museum exhibit, it's through the discovery and marking of 2 graves where human remains were interred without markings. Doing all that provided the families closure.
Mm-hmm. Is there any frustration on your part because you don't have that finality, so to speak, or do you think you put in such a valiant effort that you got as far as you possibly could?
Certainly it's very frustrating. We have put in a valiant effort. we found in the course of looking for this airplane wreckage, we found 9 shipwrecks, and many of them are very significant. I've written about those. I've designed museum exhibits about those. I lecture about those. So we're making discoveries. We're sharing it with the public while at the same time keeping the memory of Flight 2501 alive. So I consider what we've done a great success, even without finding the remains.
Absolutely, especially considering that you were the only one looking for it. That must have meant a lot to those families.
Well, I wanted to make sure that the families were in touch with us so that if we did make a discovery, we could let them know personally, privately, before the media found out. And so that was one of the reasons I made an effort to contact them. But in contacting and talking to them, what came out was an outpouring of emotion, stories about these individuals. It was clear that all this needed to be memorialized in the book that I did eventually write.
Yeah. All right. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for your time today. And for the last 20 years you have spent looking for that. Even though you couldn't find it, I think you found answers, which may have been more important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.